A bipartisan group of 10 former top presidential economists wrote an editorial yesterday urging action on the U.S. budget, calling the current record deficit severe and dire. One of the signatories was President Obama's former chair of the Council of Economic Advisors, Christina Romer. Dr. Romer is also a Berkeley economics professor and a Bloomberg contributing editor, and she joins us now. Such a pleasure to have you. Thank you so much for coming in. Let me ask you, first of all, about the bipartisan support here. We were chatting about it a little during the commercial break. There are names that you wouldn't necessarily expect to see on the same ticket, Marty Feldstein and Greg Mankiw, along there with Laura Tyson and yourself. Do you think it makes an impact when people see two sides that normally are seen as so far apart come together on one issue?
Well, that was certainly the hope. I mean, I think this whole project was born by the fact that Greg Mankiw and I were on a panel together, and we found ourselves both saying very positive things about the Bowles-Simpson Commission report, and it got us thinking that maybe there genuinely was bipartisan support for this. And it was remarkable when we started asking around how many people from across the ideological spectrum wanted to put their names on this. And I think, our hope is that that helps politicians to see that there is a lot of bipartisan support. Maybe it gives them a little bit of cover as they take on what are going to be very difficult political negotiations.
Do you think now, Dr. Romer, is the time, though, to cut back? I mean, you yourself were urging more stimulus spending than we saw. The Obama administration, for which you worked, has boosted spending to record levels here because they want to stave off the bad problems of the recession, pick up the lack of private spending and replace it with public. Is now the time to turn that around?
So I think certainly from my own point of view, that now is not, when I'm saying now, I mean 2011, 2012 is not the time to be reducing the budget deficit a lot. I think exactly what the bipartisan commission is talking about is the big deficit problem isn't really the deficit today. It's the fact that when you look out 20 or 30 years, those deficits just keep getting bigger and bigger, and that's where the huge problem is. And indeed, one reason to tackle the bigger drivers of the deficit is at some level to give you some space to do what you need to do now. Right? Even I wouldn't support more fiscal stimulus now unless it's in the context of a broader plan, because you do need to convince the world that we understand our deficit's out of control. We understand we need to deal with it. But the whole way that you perhaps get yourself space to not immediately push the economy into severe fiscal austerity is to say, let's write down the plan, let's pass it today that says what revenues are we going to raise, what spending are we going to cut as we come out of this recession. I think that's always been the smart economic policy, is do what you need to do for jobs now, but absolutely put in place a plan, a very credible plan, a signed, sealed, and delivered plan for getting the deficit under control over time.
Let me ask you, because you worked so closely with the president and have some insight into the way he thinks, why would the administration order the Deficit Commission to come up with conclusions or suggestions that it then seems to flee from? I mean, a lot of people who aren't in Washington think that the Deficit Commission came up with some great things. It was ordered by President Obama, and yet he seems afraid to touch any of the results.
Well, I mean, first, let's concentrate on the fact that he did call for the Deficit Commission. So one of the things I can assure you is that the president cares deeply about the deficit, and it really has bothered him tremendously that, it's really been for the last 10 years that we've been kicking the can down the road, because we've known that the long-run deficit was a problem for a very long period of time. So we absolutely did do the right thing by commissioning Bowles and Simpson to put together this commission and to come up with a report. What he said in the press conference after the State of the Union is it's a delicate process, and he's trying to figure out what's the best way to get the consensus around something like the bipartisan commission. And he made the calculation that him coming out and saying this is what you should do maybe isn't the best way.
Although, do you think,
our group,
Dr. Romer, do you think he comes out and says it after the election? I mean, is it really about that?
I'm certainly hoping that he embraces it before then. I'm hoping that all the policymakers embrace it before then, because I don't think we should wait until 2012 or 2013 to do this. I also think there's a political calculation that the American people are actually maybe ahead of the policymakers on this.
Got it. Absolutely. All right. Thank you so much, Dr. Romer. Christina Romer.